CEO in a wheelchair, met a mechanic that night. It changed both their lives forever. The rain hammered against Ethan Webb's windshield as he drove down the empty highway, his truck's engine sputtering with the same exhaustion he felt in his bones. It was nearly midnight, and he'd just finished a 16-hour shift at Henderson's Auto Repair, or what was left of it. The shop was 2 months behind on rent, and Ethan knew his boss would be closing the doors soon. That's when he saw her. A white van sat crooked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking desperately through the downpour, and beside it, barely visible in the storm, sat a woman in a wheelchair, drenched to the bone, her phone pressed uselessly to her ear. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled over, grabbed his toolbox from the truck bed, and jogged through the rain toward her. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice nearly swallowed by thunder. "You need help?" The woman looked up, and even through the rain streaming down her face, Ethan could see the relief flood her features. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe in her early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that held both strength and vulnerability. "My van broke down," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her shoulders. "I've been trying to call roadside assistance for an hour, but there's no signal out here." Ethan crouched down to her level. "Let me take a look. What happened before it died?" "The engine started making this grinding noise, then just stopped." He nodded, already moving toward the hood. "I'm a mechanic. Might be able to get you going." For the next 40 minutes, Ethan worked in the rain, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the cold numbing his fingers. The woman, she'd told him her name was Elena, stayed in her wheelchair near the van's open door, watching him with an intensity that made something stir in his chest. "You should wait inside your van," Ethan called out. "No sense both of us getting pneumonia." "I don't mind the rain," Elena replied quietly. "Besides, I want to see what you're doing." There was something in her voice, a quality Ethan couldn't quite name. It wasn't just gratitude, it was curiosity, respect even. Finally, he straightened, wiping his hands on his already soaked jeans. "Your alternator belt snapped. I had a spare in my truck. It's not a perfect fit, but it'll get you where you need to go." Elena's eyes widened. "You just keep spare parts in your truck?" Ethan shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Habit, I guess. Never know when someone might need help." He paused. "Try starting it now." The engine roared to life, smooth and steady. Elena's face transformed with a smile that took Ethan's breath away, not because it was perfect, but because it was genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes in a way that suggested she didn't smile like that often. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her purse. "Nothing," Ethan said firmly. "You don't owe me anything. But the part, your time. It's just a belt. Cost me $8. He smiled tiredly. "Consider it a random act of kindness. Pay it forward someday." She studied him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across her face. "What's your name?" "Ethan Webb." "Thank you, Ethan Webb." She handed him a business card despite his protests. "If you ever need anything at all, please call me." Ethan glanced at the card. Elena Morrison, consultant. A phone number, nothing more. "Take care of yourself," he said softly, then walked back to his truck, never once looking back. But Elena watched him until his taillights disappeared into the darkness, his name already burned into her memory. What Ethan didn't know was that Elena Morrison wasn't just a consultant. She was the Elena Morrison, founder and CEO of Morrison Industries, a tech and manufacturing empire worth $12 billion. The wheelchair wasn't temporary, A car accident 2 years ago had stolen her ability to walk, but it had given her something else, a clarity about people that she'd never had before. When you couldn't walk, people revealed themselves. Some looked through you, some pitied you, and some, like Ethan Webb, simply saw you as a person who needed help. That night, she made a single phone call to her head of security. "Find out everything about Ethan Webb," she said quietly, "but do it discreetly." 3 days later, Ethan was under the hood of a 2003 Honda Civic when he heard the familiar sound of an accessible van pulling into Henderson's auto repair. His heart kicked strangely in his chest before he even looked up. Elena Morrison maneuvered her wheelchair through the shop's entrance with practiced ease, and Ethan found himself wiping his hands nervously on a rag, suddenly aware of the grease under his fingernails and the permanent oil stains on his work shirt. "Elena," he said, surprise coloring his voice. "Is everything okay?" The van dash quote. "The van's fine," she assured him, a small smile playing at her lips. "Thanks to you, I actually came to talk to you." Ethan's boss, Henderson, materialized from the back office, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the expensive van. "Ma'am, welcome to Henderson's. What can we do for you today?" Elena's gaze never left Ethan. "I'd like to speak with Ethan, if he has a moment." Henderson's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. He clearly wanted the commission. But he nodded. "Webb, take your break. Talk to the lady." They moved to a small bench outside the shop, where autumn's sun fought through the clouds. Elena positioned her wheelchair to face him, and Ethan sat down, his heart doing something uncomfortable in his chest. "I want to offer you a job," Elena said directly. "I have a project that needs someone with your skills. Mechanical engineering, problem solving, hands-on work. It would pay well, very well. Full medical benefits, top-tier coverage." Ethan felt hope flare in his chest before reality crushed it. "I can't," he said, the words tasting like ash. "My mother, she's sick, stage 3 kidney disease. I need to be here, close to home, in case she needs me. And even with good insurance, finding doctors who'll take new kidney patients." "What if I told you the position is local?" Elena said softly. "And that, I know a specialist. One of the best nephrologists in the country." Ethan looked up at her sharply. "Why are you doing this?" "Because 2 years ago, I was in a car accident," Elena said quietly. "And when I woke up in the hospital, unable to feel my legs, I learned very quickly who my real friends were. Most people saw my wheelchair before they saw me. But you? You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. No hesitation, no pity, just kindness. Something passed between them in that moment. A recognition, a connection that neither could quite name." "Think about it," Elena said, handing him a folder. She paused, then added with unexpected vulnerability, "And Ethan, would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime? Not about the job, just coffee." The hope in her voice made his answer easy. "I'd like that very much." Coffee became their Wednesday ritual. They met at a small cafe downtown, always at the outside tables despite the October chill. Ethan learned that Elena was brilliant, with a sharp wit that kept him on his toes and a laugh that made him forget about everything else. During their second meeting, Elena casually mentioned Morrison Industries while discussing manufacturing innovation. Ethan had nearly choked on his coffee. "Morrison Industries?" he'd asked. "The tech company. Wait, are you—" Elena had smiled into her coffee cup. "CEO and founder, among other things." Ethan had stared at her, pieces clicking into place. The expensive van, the confident way she carried herself, the job offer that seemed too good to be true. "You're Elena Morrison, the billionaire." She'd looked at him then, and he saw fear beneath the composure. "Does it matter?" Ethan had thought about the woman across from him who made terrible jokes about engine parts, who'd sat in the rain watching him work with genuine interest, who looked at him like he mattered. He swallowed hard. You're a CEO, a billionaire, and I'm just a mechanic with grease under his nails. How could someone like you really want me? Elena's eyes softened, fear flickering into something braver. Because you see me for who I am, Ethan. Not the money, not the chair, just me. His chest tightened, and after a long pause, he nodded. None of this matter, he said honestly. It doesn't change who you are. The relief on her face had been worth everything. By their fourth coffee, Ethan had taken the job. His mother's appointment with Dr. Chen was scheduled. And somewhere between discussions about turbine efficiency and Elena's terrible attempts at car puns, Ethan realized he was falling in love. It terrified him, the vast distance between his world and hers, the impossibility of it all. But Elena looked at him like none of that mattered, and he found himself believing her. She thought he didn't notice the small things, the way Henderson suddenly found an investor to save the shop, the way Dr. Chen's office called with a miraculously available appointment slot, the way doors opened just a little easier for Ethan at Morrison Industries. Elena had been careful, discreet even, but Ethan knew kindness when he saw it, and he knew her. The truth came out on a Tuesday evening. Ethan arrived at Elena's home, a modern, accessible house that still managed to feel warm, to find her in her office, surrounded by papers. She looked up when he entered, and he saw immediately that something was wrong. We need to talk, she said quietly. His stomach dropped, but he sat down across from her. Okay, she handed him a folder. I need to be honest with you about something I've done. Inside were receipts, payments, legal documents showing everything she'd orchestrated behind the scenes. You paid off Henderson's debts, Ethan said slowly. Bought the building, arranged my mom's appointment. Yes, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. I know I should have asked. I know it was wrong to go behind your back, but Ethan, I couldn't just watch you struggle when I had the power to help. After that night in the rain, when you helped me without asking for anything in return, her voice cracked, you reminded me why I built this company in the first place. Not for the money or the power, but to help people. Tears streamed down her face now. I fell in love with you, she whispered, somewhere between coffee and terrible jokes and watching you be brilliant at work. And I know this is too much, and the differences between us are... Elena, Ethan moved to kneel in front of her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. Stop. She froze, fear flashing across her face. I'm not angry, he said quietly. How could I be? You've given me everything. A job I love, hope for my mother, a future I never thought I'd have. He paused, his throat tight. But I need you to understand something. I'm a mechanic from nowhere. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with a single mom who worked 3 jobs. You're Elena Morrison. You have billions of dollars and companies, and this whole world I don't understand. His voice dropped to a whisper. I don't know if someone like me deserves someone like you. Elena's expression shifted from fear to something fierce. She cupped his face in her hands. You're Ethan Webb, the man who stopped in the rain for a stranger, the man who refused payment because it was the right thing to do, the man who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees past my chair and my money to just me. Her voice softened. You're exactly who I want. The only question that matters is, do you want me? Ethan looked at her, really looked at the woman who'd trusted him with her vulnerability, who'd seen past his worn clothes to the person underneath. who'd chosen him despite having the whole world at her fingertips. Yes, he breathed, and the word felt like coming home. God, yes, I love you, Elena. When he kissed her, it tasted like tears and coffee and every impossible dream he'd never dared to voice. 8 months later, Ethan stood in his mother's hospital room, holding her hand as she opened her eyes after surgery. With Dr. Chen's connections, Ethan's mother was moved up the list when a compatible donor became available. The transplant had been successful. Dr. Chen stood at the foot of the bed, smiling gently. Everything went perfectly, Mrs. Webb. The kidney is functioning beautifully. His mother's eyes found Ethan's face, then moved to Elena sitting beside him, and tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. My boy, she whispered, you found someone good. I found someone extraordinary, Ethan corrected, his voice breaking. Elena reached out to take his mother's other hand, and the three of them sat there in the quiet hospital room, bound together by love and second chances, and the ripple effects of one act of kindness on a rainy night. Later, as Ethan and Elena stood in the parking lot watching the sunset, she leaned into his side. Your mom's going to be okay, she said softly. Because of you, Ethan replied. Because you found Dr. Chen. Because you made sure she got the best care. Because you stopped in the rain, Elena interrupted gently. Everything that happened started with that moment, with your kindness. Ethan pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. How did I get so lucky? Elena looked up at him, this man who'd appeared in a storm and changed everything. Her perspective, her priorities, her entire life. We both did. And as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and amber, Ethan thought back to that rainy highway, to the choice between driving past and stopping to help. He'd chosen kindness without knowing it would lead here, to love, to family, to a future brighter than anything he'd ever imagined. Sometimes that's all it takes. One moment, one choice, one act of compassion in the rain, and everything changes forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and join us for more soulful stories, where every act of compassion has the power to change everything.